Please mute yourselves, guys. In the meantime, welcome everybody to the CHRO webinar. Before we get started, just give some time for the attendees to fill up there. Oh yeah, numbers are ticking up nicely. We'll give it another 10 to 15 seconds. All right. Welcome everyone to the CHRO webinar. My name is Sugulan Kabinde. I'm the managing editor of CHRO South Africa. And I'd like to thank you for making time to join us today on this very interesting discussion on how organizations can future-proof their onboarding processes in 2021 and beyond. What we'll be discussing with is basically how to and plan for the big challenges that COVID will continue to throw at organizations in the coming year and beyond that. Today, in this webinar, which is brought to you by Talent Smith Technology, our panelists will be Bess Kosana, who is the MTN General Manager and Regional Talent Leader at MTN. Nathan Muchawadi, who is having technical glitches. He is the Executive for Human Resources and CSI at Capitec. Hopefully, Nathan will be able to join us. He's busy troubleshooting his technical issues with one of our colleagues at the moment. So crossing fingers to the webinar gods to let Nathan join us this morning. And finally, we have Robbie Williamson, who is the Relationship Manager for EMEA at onboarding. And the reason why we've got the likes of Robbie today is that throughout the crisis, he's been working closely with some of the world's top employers in adapting their onboarding programs. He has seen firsthand what works and what doesn't, and can share with confidence that the new environment does not necessarily prevent organizations from knocking new hires off their socks with their onboarding processes. So welcome to you all. Thank you, Robbie and Bess, for making time for us. Today, I'm going to ask that, Bess, you turn off your camera and we give Robbie the floor to really open up the conversation and take us through really the elements of onboarding or the future of onboarding, rather. Take it away, Robbie.
Perfect. Thank you, Sangula. And yes, thanks everyone for having me here today. It's a great pleasure to be able to present alongside Beth and hopefully Nathan, if he manages to get on. And obviously we're talking around how we can future-proof our onboarding for 2021 and beyond. So as Sangula mentioned, my name is Robbie Williamson, and I'm the Enterprise Relationship Manager here at onboarding for EMEA. And my role is to work with global organizations around how they can build and execute a strategy that will deliver exceptional onboarding and also employee experience programs. So for those of you who aren't familiar with onboarding, we are an experience-driven onboarding platform, and our mission is to empower every organization to put experience first. And when we both first built the platform, we built it upon the realization that traditional onboarding was broken. It was focused on paperwork. It was focused on forms. It was focused on checklists, which, whilst these are all very important subjects.
Actually, that's it, yes. Anyway.
Hey, Sangula, I think you're still on audio. Can you turn on to mute, please?
Alrighty.
I think that's Nathan. Nathan.
Oh, Nathan's on.
Please mute yourself, Nathan. I will come to you shortly.
Thank you, Nathan. So traditionally, when we looked at onboarding, it was built for compliance, checklists, and paperwork. It's not necessarily what the people want. It's built for the organization. So we're looking at something which is focused on compliance, not experience. So when we looked at onboarding, we looked to reinvent this process. And we looked to reinvent it through the lens of the employee. And we did this by focusing on meaningful experiences and providing a number of human connections which help drive an increased engagement level. They help heighten the experience that a new hire is going to receive, and by a direct result of this, decrease the time it takes for a new hire to become productive. So we all know that 2020 has been crazy. It's been a crazy year for business. It's been a crazy year for HR. And also over and above that, it's been a crazy year for onboarding. And over and above every single issue that HR has faced this year, suddenly organizations who were still hiring had to shift from an in-person and in-office onboarding experience to looking at how they could onboard their new hires in a remote or a blended environment. While still providing an exceptional experience, this isn't an easy task. And the list of onboarding challenges which we've had this year have been significant. And these were from for solving logistical problems, such as how we could get the new hire set up with the equipment they need, to solving training issues, such as how can we get this new hire ramped and trained if they're not in the office and access to our facilities? And then there's been cultural challenges. So how can we possibly get the new hire to understand our culture and live our values if they're not in the office? And how can we get them to make connections and meaningful connections with their managers and their colleagues if they're not able to sit and meet with them face to face? And as we come to the back end of 2020, and as hopefully we move into 2021 and see things changing and turning a little bit, there are going to be far more organizations who are moving out of a hiring freeze or a hiring slowdown. And they're about to face these same challenges very, very soon. But the good news is that 2020 is nearly over. I saw on the BBC this morning here in the UK that we've just approved a vaccine. So we're all very excited about that. But we're also able to learn from what we've experienced over the course of the last 10 or 11 months. And the key to what we have learned this year is that we will continue to be faced with challenges that are extremely hard to predict and impossible to control as we move into 2021. And that's why we need to start preparing for 2021 immediately. And we need to do this in a way that not only provides our new employees with a great onboarding experience, but also ensures that we are prepared for any unpredictable changes and challenges that we may face. So here at Onboarder, we've had the pleasure of working with some of the world's top employers throughout the COVID crisis. And as Sangula mentioned, we've been able to see firsthand what works and what doesn't. So now what I would like to do is take you through the 5 steps that we believe you should implement now that will help future-proof your onboarding for next year and beyond. Now, the first step is how we can wow our new hires with a personalized experience. So instead of the traditional onboarding approach I just described, the key to nailing your onboarding is to provide your new hires with personalization of experience. And this will be one that not only educates them on what they need to know, but also gets them excited, it gets them engaged, and it gets them enthused and therefore productive extremely quickly. What we want to avoid at all costs is for our new hires to be sitting at home. They haven't met their team in person. They don't know a huge amount about them. They haven't had an opportunity to connect with them. And all they receive from the company are anonymous mails. And these mails contain checklists, compliance, and right to work documentation. This method is not going to build engagement. It won't provide a positive experience. And as a result, it's not going to meet a new hire's expectations, and it's going to heighten the risk of early stage attrition. So what we should look to do is provide personal communication in all forms that go out to that new hire. And by doing this, we're going to try to reduce or remove any natural anxiety that that new hire might be feeling. We should be helping them to get to know their team, helping them to get to know their manager, and showing them that the organization really cares about who they are as a person. And through this, build a strong sense of welcome and belong within the business before they start and over their first few very important months. And of course, alongside this, what we also want to ensure is that we are setting them up with everything that they need for success from day one. And this isn't just what we've seen over the course of the last 10 months is working. This is backed by research as well. And there's very groundbreaking study conducted by Dan Cable, which actually inspired us here at onboarding to build this platform and build the product. And this study found that if we ask new hires about themselves and encourage them to show their best selves during onboarding, there's a direct 57% decrease in 6-month turnover. And as an added benefit to this, an 18% increase in customer satisfaction. So by ensuring that we provide personalized messaging, we can decrease 6-month turnover by almost 2/3 by taking that simple step. So to give you a few examples from our clients, we have a client called Komodo Health, and one of the ways they personalize this experience is by giving lunch delivered to their new hire on their first day. And they look to encourage all of their team members and wider team members to take part in a virtual lunch so they can start to welcome them, start to get to know them, and start to make friends within the business. And another client, Norgene, uses onboarding and a third-party company to send a welcome gift to the new hire when they accept the job offer. So again, an element of personalization and an element of welcome. And we have a number of other clients who ask their new hires what their favorite 3 p.m. snack is. And whilst this may seem like an innocuous question, they then ensure that that favorite snack is delivered to them on their first day. And what this does is it wows them in a really important way. And it sends an exceptionally strong message. And the message is that I, as your manager, and we as an organization have listened to you. We've taken note of what encourages you, what motivates you, what interests you, what your likes and dislikes are. And as a token of our appreciation for you joining the company, here's a little present, which is obviously going to be personal to you. Our second point here is, how can we create moments of human connection throughout this process? And for me, for any exceptional onboarding program which I have seen, this point is intrinsic to the success of that program. And this is why, because human connection is something that drives all of us. And it's going to be the ingredient that will take your onboarding program from good to great. So we see this with our own eyes here at onboarding, and we also see it with new hires across our client base globally. And there's a huge amount of research that has pointed to this fact that human connection will move the needle more than anything else within onboarding and employee experience. So one study that compared onboarding programs that only focused on compliance and clarification of job, and it compared these against programs that were able to spark human connection and able to spark a sense of the company's culture. And the second group produced 3 times the retention rates of the first. And the researchers also found that connection had the biggest impact by far on business metrics beyond just retention. And I think on a personal level, we can relate to this, and we can relate to it because onboarding or changing a new role is an extremely big transition or change in our life. And it's a transition that can make us feel nervous and it can make us feel vulnerable. So I'd love you to all think back to a moment in your life where maybe you were changing jobs, or you were going to school or university for the first time, or you're moving into a new neighborhood, and think about what made that challenge, made that change something that was positive. And I'd suggest that in the majority of these occasions, it was finding someone with whom you had commonality of interest. It was finding someone that you could share ideas with, and really finding someone who you could be your friend. So if we think about this in a business context, if we can facilitate moments of human connection and speed up the opportunity for a new hire to start to make friends and feel accepted, then we're going to decrease the time for them to become productive. So the way our clients do this and the way they facilitate moments is really looking at the onboarding journey holistically. How can they find where they can get the new hire to know their manager? How can they find instances where they can interact with their team or other individuals in the business? And it can be through personal messages. It could be through catch-ups, and lots of other instances beside. One of our customers here in the UK, TalkTalk, which is a large telco, utilize a buddy system which gives a new member of staff a friendly face, a face that they know and a face they can seek support from over the course of their first few months of employment. And what this does is it helps them to settle into the new role more quickly, and it reduces the chances of them feeling isolated or unsupported during that crucial 3-month term. And when we think about life at the moment, obviously all this has become increasingly more difficult. And it's increasingly more difficult because we're onboarding in a remote or a blended environment. But as a result, it's extremely important that we get this right. So thankfully, it is completely possible. Many of our other customers have turned their one-to-ones into virtual coffee catch-ups. They think about how they can inject moments of human connection within the day-to-day working life, and also in an extracurricular form. So culture committees within teams, within business units, or group-wide that are looking at areas where we can get our staff, we can get our people to interact on a personal level. So there's many creative and exciting ways we can create connection, even whilst being physically apart. So our third point here is, how can we empower your hiring managers? Now, we all know HR designed the onboarding experience, but what we need is we need our managers to execute it, and we need them to live and breathe it. And there's a piece of Gallup research that's shown that a manager's impact on employee engagement is over 70%. So if we have an individual who can impact an employee's engagement at that level, it's so important that we make sure that they are involved within this process. And it's so important to acknowledge the manager's critical role here and ensure that we set them up to be successful. But there is a challenge here, and the challenge is that many managers don't know their importance within this space. And they also see the tasks which are set to them or set for them within an onboarding journey as over and above what they need to do or their day job. So they look to get rid of these as quickly as possible. And in their defense, they're extremely busy, and they see what's put in front of them as additional work. So how can we ensure that not only are we articulating the importance of this to them, and that by putting in a little bit of additional time now, they're going to save time down the line with looking to replace headcount, but also ensuring that they understand that they are the key for this onboarding process to be as smooth and as experience focused as possible. So our clients solve this challenge by really guiding their managers and coaching them through the onboarding journey in a step-by-step fashion. And they do this by drip feeding simple tasks to them at the appropriate time in the journey through the appropriate communication device. And these tasks are simple to execute and have an intrinsic impact on that employee experience. By doing it this way, they ensure that nothing gets forgotten, and they ensure that the managers aren't overwhelmed with a huge number of tasks to complete at any one point in time. So our fourth point on how we can ensure we're future-proofing our onboarding is to stay agile. As I mentioned before, we are not going to be able to predict everything that's going to impact our workforce and impact our onboarding programs next year. But what we can do is we can focus on the principles, and we can focus on the technologies that offer flexibility and adaptability so that when change happens, we can pivot quickly. So rather than spending months debating, devising, implementing and evaluating strategies, the key for us is that we act fast and then aim for continuous improvement. So implement and iterate. And our customers do this by having, for example, their onboarding best practice journeys set up within Onboarder, and they split it into different modules. So at a glance, they can see the communication that are going out to new hires, the communications that are going out to managers and internal stakeholders at each step in the journey. And with a few clicks, they can easily update the content or link to new resources, depending on what the situation requires. And they also look to have a remote and an in-office onboarding journey created so that as circumstances change, again, they can quickly pivot and deliver the experience that's needed. And this goes on beyond just onboarding. One of our clients, who is a leading global media agency, understood that reboarding their employees back into the office after a long period of working from home was going to be a huge change. And it was going to be a huge opportunity for them to increase their employee experience levels. And they used this opportunity to provide very detailed communication around what to expect. They provided video of what to expect when coming into the office, how to navigate the foyer, how to get up and down in the lifts, how to look at using the communal areas. So there weren't any surprises for the employees as they came back in. And they looked to give an understanding of what was expected of them in relation to returning to the office. Was it immediate? Was it going to be 2 or 3 days a week? But by communicating effectively over the course of this period, they helped reduce this fear of change. And they also instilled a confidence in their employees that the leadership were managing the crisis and supporting their staff as effectively and as compassionately as possible. And this brings us to our final point. And our final point really looks at how, when circumstances change, the way our employees think, the way our employees feel, and the way our employees will show up for work will change as well. And that's why step 5 is how we can listen, how we can react, and how we can influence. So when we think about this, we know we can't fix a problem if we don't know what or where it is. So whilst we may have the best preparation in the world, if we're not listening to our people, we're not going to be in a position to take actions if circumstances require. So when we look at this from our customers, a great example of how they listen, react, and influence is through the manager nudges I described earlier. And we actually call them smart nudges within onboarding, as they're set up to react differently depending on what kind of feedback is received. So we all know that a good onboarding program has many functions, but one of the goals of it is to reduce that 6-month attrition rate. So within the onboarding journeys which we deliver, we suggest that there are numerous check-ins which we place for the employees to understand how they're going. So after 3 or 4 weeks, we might just ask a simple question. Out of 5, how was your experience today? Now, if the new hire gives us a 4 or 5 out of 5, we're starting to listen to the feedback. That's a positive experience. The reaction is, in this instance, is that we'll redirect them to Glassdoor so that they can leave a reference and start to influence the wider community about how amazing it is to work at our company. Another reaction might be that, okay, well, let's ask this person if they have any references and referrals they might be able to provide to the business so that we can start to leverage their network as a possible area for new hires as well. But conversely, sadly, we're also going to get individuals whose experience isn't up to expectation. So if, when we ask that question, we get a 1, 2, or 3-star answer, what we do is we see this as a serious red flag that we've got potential early stage attrition coming up on the horizon. So the reaction in this instance is going to be to send an email to their manager, to their HR business partner, just saying that Robbie has joined and his experience to date has not been up to speed. Let's set a meeting and let's talk to them about what is going wrong and understand how we can fix it, so we can then influence their decision to continue on with the business. So the possibilities of the feedback we can ask for and how we manage it are obviously endless, but this is a really nice indication of how we can start to influence the feedback which we're starting to receive. So to sum it up, the new normal doesn't mean that your onboarding can't provide an exceptional experience for your new hires. And we're very sure that by following these 5 steps, wowing with a personalized experience, creating moments of human connection, empowering your hiring managers, staying agile, and last but not least, listening, reacting, and influencing, that you'll be able to deliver an exceptional onboarding journey that will consistently wow new hires during what has been a very, very difficult time. So I really hope that you found this an insightful presentation, and I do look forward to any questions you may have a little bit later on. Thank you.
Fantastic, Robbie. That was definitely very insightful. I mean, when we posted the webinar, we often have a question to say, what question would you like answered in this session? And a lot of the questions are along the lines of, how do we adapt to the new way of virtual working? How do you onboard somebody virtually, and so forth? And I think you have really covered that quite extensively in your presentation, and I'd like to thank you for that. Before we move on to Bess, I'd like Nathan, are you there? Have we managed to resolve your technological gremlins over there? Oh, yes.
Can you hear me?
Video good, audio good, We are rock and roll. Thank you for joining. And as I said earlier, guys, this is the HR executive for the executive for HR and CSI at Capitec. Nathan will be joining us again on screen very shortly. But for now, I'd like to go over to Bess. Nathan, you can switch off your video again. Bess, you there? Fantastic. Bess, I want to find out, at MTN, what was the experience that you had from the beginning of the national lockdown with regards to your onboarding processes?
Well, good afternoon, it's still morning. Can you hear me, Sungula?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. Morning, everyone. I guess COVID came at a time when we all did not expect it, and there were a number of challenges because we did have a couple of new employees that needed to be onboarded and join the organization. It meant that when the announcement of lockdown was announced, that we needed to contact the employees and let them know that they would not be able to come to the office. And we had to arrange how then do we then meet with them to give them the necessary tools in terms of their laptops, in terms of the little presents that we normally issue, diary, MTN pen, your T-shirt that would typically give you when we have onboarding in the office. So we then arranged with the new employees that they meet. Firstly, we had to call them and arrange with IT help desk in the office that they collect their laptops at the office, and then they're able to be given all the necessary passwords that they need to be able to access the system. And then there was an issue of then how do we onboard them with their line managers and the team. And what we did, we handed out coffee vouchers where the employee could go and get themselves a coffee, and they would have a coffee session with their line manager online. So we arrange online onboarding with the line managers, as well as the necessary other team members that the person would be working in. So we would arrange Teams meeting and we would introduce them online with the team members and also other partners or functions that they would need to work with. We also did the full onboarding that we would normally have in the office online, where we invited the medical aid presentation from CAMF, and they would be online, present the options, and the person would then be able to ask questions. Also, the same with the pension fund that was arranged online, and people were able then to complete all the necessary documents and scan them back to us and send them back. But obviously, with the opportunities opening up to level 1, what we've asked is that interaction between line manager and employee is very important because that we know that, leadership is always about interaction and connection. We love teams, but it doesn't always do the trick, so that human touch is always important. So we've encouraged at level 1 that line managers should please have coffee session with the new people, or even if it's a lunch as well, just to have a face-to-face interaction. What we've also done to ensure that they're onboarded properly is that we've encouraged line managers. We have set up structured meetings. For the first week, the employee would meet with their line manager on a daily basis to check in, to clarify any expectations, performance expectations of what is expected, and give them the necessary direction, support of where to find what and who to talk to in relation to other work needs. The HR business partner is also responsible for checking on the new employees at least once a week to find out if they're settling in well, if there's anything that they need, and we would take them through all our benefits, our processes and our systems and how things work. We also arrange for online training. We have a system called MTN Learn, where all our employees are able to access their learning online, and that will be arranged and booked. So in the first month, it's all about putting together a formal onboarding program, which was mostly done online, with a few 1 or 2 interactions via face-to-face where possible. And obviously, when not possible, it is not done. We also have the challenge that we also have people in the regions, in the African regions, where a person might be sitting in Cameroon and now is appointed to work in Nigeria and unfortunately cannot travel. So what we did in that instance is that we organized with the Cameroon office to onboard the person for us, to give them the necessary tools, the laptops and access to our systems, and then they can start working via Teams with the office in Nigeria. It's been a huge challenge trying to get everyone to adapt to the new modus operandi, but also empowering line managers that with COVID, you no longer need to measure people on the amount of time they spend on Teams, but rather it's important that you measure people on their KPIs and the outputs that they actually perform on what is required. So we did put in place, we did train our line managers and prepare them about how to work and manage their people more effectively online, how to have regular interaction, team meetings online, coffee sessions, sessions where you just meet together and have fun rather than talk about work. But also, it was also important during COVID that people actually get to understand the challenges that people face in their homes. We found that if you're a mother, you've got school-going children, you need to do homework, you need to cook, you need to clean the house. I mean, level 5 was the worst, trying to clean the house and you've got no household help. So we also needed to be more understanding that people might not get to things as quick as we expect them to be. People might work even during the day, they might be busy sorting out homeworks and other things, and then in the evening they will then catch up with their work demands which they needed to deliver. So we became very flexible in our approach. We became open. We encouraged a lot of open communication so that we understood that people are able to perform or not, given their challenges, whether a person is feeling well or not, how do we deal with that? We had an email box where people could email to the COVID team and let us know that they're not feeling well. And if they were not feeling well, then the company doctor would be able to contact them, if necessary, send them to the nearest hospital so that they get the necessary help. So constant daily communication was necessary to keep people informed. And especially in the regions as well, there was lots of panic around people now sitting in some of the countries where hospital facilities are not that great and wanting to go home and saying, Bess, what happens to me if I get COVID? And we then had to arrange with international SOS to ensure that if there were any concerns, we would then be able to fly them out of the country back into South Africa in any emergency cases. What we did as well for the expatriates, we set up a WhatsApp group where people could communicate. We could ensure that we're in constant communication with each other, especially those people who are not with their families in the different countries who might feel a bit isolated. There was constant communication via WhatsApp, via email around what's happening, what are we doing with COVID, how are we treating the different levels of COVID, whether we're at red stage, amber stage, green stage, whether we'll be opening the different offices or not. So there was constant communication around those issues. Sungula, do you want to go into your next question? or have I started answering the next question? I can't hear you, Sungula.
Yes, meeting. As you must always have one of those moments in every online discussion. I was saying you've answered all the questions except the one that I wanted to ask about future, going into the future. What are the changes you are looking to implement to further improve the onboarding process in 2021 and beyond?
Okay. So MTN as a business has decided that only 20 to 30% of the employees will be allowed back into the office, even at green status. So that means we will have the majority of our employees still working from home. And it also means that we continue to do onboarding online. So the lessons we have learned is really to adapt and to adjust our onboarding as per the needs, as per COVID, and whatever the circumstances of each country dictates. Because in some of our countries, we do have the majority of people back in office, whilst in South Africa, we only allow 20 to 30% people. So in South Africa, particularly, there is a booking system that you need to book in order to visit the office. So what we do with new recruits is that on their first day, we do book a meeting with their line manager in the office, and also a meeting with the IT help desk, so that we're able to ensure that they have the necessary tools. And they do have a first meeting with the line managers. And also the offices are big enough to allow social distancing. So it shouldn't be much of an issue in terms of all the precautions that need to be taken. And once they've been introduced, the person has been given the necessary tools, then they can go and work from home. We then also set up other meetings, as I said, formal meetings, which are all done via Teams, where the employee will be introduced to the rest of the team via Teams, and also other functional areas which they need to work with. They'll be introduced to those functions via Teams. We have also encouraged that at some point, if possible, the line manager and the team should try and have lunch where possible, where it is safe to do so. What happens is that also at the head office, we have the opportunity to allow the teams to have team meetings, even if it's once a month. They will come into the office, into one of the bigger boardrooms, and they will able to practice social distancing and have teaming meetings where possible. So this has meant a huge change, not only for employees. We know that there are some employees who struggle to work from home and who would choose to book a meeting to come into the office. They are welcome to, but we also try and not allow people to clog the system that they're in the office every day. We do say people should come in at least once or twice a week and not on a daily basis. And it's also for their own health and safety. Secondly, what we are doing, as we said, all documentation is currently done online, so the employee can complete that and then send it back. The normal onboarding, which has been done in the boardrooms, is now done online. We do have an onboarding day where we invite all the speakers to talk about the MTN vision, or the different functions in the business. We arrange that online, and we also talk about our staff benefits, etc. And we onboard people. So that is the new way of working. And where necessary, if we need to adapt our strategy to accommodate people, as I said, in the OpCos, a person might be sitting in Cameroon, but expected to be somewhere else. What we do, we ask the nearest office to that person to help us with the onboarding as well, to provide that person with the necessary tools. If they need access to Wi-Fi, office, etc., they would do it in that OpCo when necessary. So a lot has changed in terms of the way that we work. We work from home. We onboard our employees via line. We do meet for face-to-face where possible, and we do encourage interval meetings. We do encourage daily meetings between employee and line manager until the person has a sense of comfort. And HR would also have a follow-up meeting on a weekly basis to say, are you well settled? Is there anything else that we can do for you? How then do we support you further to ensure? What we've also said, because onboarding a person online might take a bit longer for the person to get used to the systems, the processes, and how things work. We've encouraged line managers to say, do not rush into signing a performance agreement, but rather sign that agreement at the end of the month once you know that the person is properly onboarded, has met all the necessary people, has been given all the necessary resources and the tools, and they understand, they have a better understanding of how things work. We would then come in and sign, conclude the performance, the agreed performance agreement on how they are to execute the job. And as I said, we no longer measure the amount of time a person spends online, but rather we measure the outputs that are expected to be performed by the individual. So going forward, that will be the modus operandi. We have all adapted to the new system. Our line managers have also understood that it's important to collaborate with teams. It's also important to show leadership, but also to support, to be aware of people's personal circumstances and to support them with any challenges that they have, whether they're not feeling well, whether they cannot log in today, and how do they then get access to a doctor? How do they then get access to IT support by calling the call center, etc., etc. So our line managers have had to build a lot of trust with their people, to trust their people to deliver, to trust their people to execute. And we've seen that with teams, with the collaborations, with the trust, there's been increased productivity. It is proven that with good leadership as well as collaboration, great teamwork, it has enhanced the experience of the new person as well as the old team members in embracing the new person on board. So those are the things that we are doing, and where possible, as I said, we do have lunch once a quarter where we meet to catch up and say, how are we doing? How are we keeping at home? You know, just human interaction, which is quite important. For us, that is important. It's not all about work. It's about how do we engage the person at a personal level to ensure that they are comfortable, they are supported, their family environment is suitable. And we've also given people the option to be allowed to get office furniture when need be, where they can be given an allowance and they can buy furniture and set up a proper office in their house, because we know that is the future of the workplace, that a lot of people will be working from home.
Thank you very much, Miss.
Thank you, Sungula.
Ask that, Nathan, will you come on, put your camera on quickly. We have just run a poll here about, whether attendees have recruited talent throughout the strict lockdown periods, and the findings are that 36% have said yes, and they were prepared for onboarding people online. 7% said yes, but they really struggled with the onboarding process, and 36% said no, they have not onboarded because they've had a total hire freeze throughout the lockdown period. So pretty much evenly keeled for each and every option. Nathan, do you have a comment on the poll results quickly before we get into your section of the webinar?
Yeah. No, it's not surprising. I think it's because everybody was caught with a very unprecedented pandemic. Therefore, we all were really scraping around to try and get our processes in place. One of the things that I have shared previously was the challenge of having laptops. It was a big challenge that I think all companies were trying to procure laptops for their employees or to rent them. And as a result, that also was had a big impact on the onboarding process. We were so adjusted to face-to-face, people coming into the office and being welcomed and having buddy system and all that. But all of that, yeah, I do agree with the polling.
Okay. And the question I have for you is, I've seen a lot of organizations saying they higher fees during the lockdown period. In your instance, I remember in one of our conversations that you spoke about a different approach during this online period, whereas instead of trying to bring people from outside the organization, you created some internal mobility within the organization where you move people to different parts of the business because maybe they were not able to work from home because of call center. The call center was closed and so forth. Can you elaborate on your strategy during the lockdown to really adapt to?
Yeah. Sugula, I think it was a business. We observed that our branches had to be closed. And the moment that happened, more people went virtual. And where did we get a lot of business pressure was in our call center, which was tremendous uptake from the previous months and years. We had to then make a decision because some of the branch employees would have to go home on unpaid leave because they did not have enough days, or we were not going to make and adjust the payments. So in decision which we then had was most of those with comorbidities would be accommodated in other parts of the business. And it was what maybe other people would call flexible working or agile or multi-skilling, but it had to happen very quickly. The HRBP, the HR team had to adjust our processes in terms of how do we consult, how do we pay them, because some where they have incentive schemes, we had to give them letters, we had to adjust our success factor system, which is the HR SEP system. We had to do training, and the end result was we had about 400 of our branch staff who were accommodated in our call center, in our anti-money laundering, because that also became quite a big area, and also in our Capital Direct, which is our online lending platform. And I think what was for us a plus was that most of those employees already understood our client. They understood our culture on saving, our culture on being what you call a CEO, being client-centric, exhibiting energy, and taking ownership. So yeah, at the end, we ended up with a very successful internal mobility. Most of them have gone back now because there's some normality now in our business, but you're still seeing that our online platforms, our app, our USSD have had a a significant uptake. It reminds me of the time with the ATMs where people didn't want to use ATMs. We're starting to see now that shift. And I think even with the Black Friday, it was shown that there's more people who went, and online was even though it was on a low base, it grew much faster than people going into the retail stores and the malls.
Okay, fantastic. If everybody can come back on camera just to, get some Q&A questions from the attendees for our last section. One of the elements, I think, Robbie, you touched on it, is the whole element of culture and how that onboarding people working from home impacts the whole organization. Now, culture means many different things to many different people. And I would like to know, perhaps I can ask Nathan, have you had an adjustment to the organizational culture due to having more people working from home? And in the event of new people entering the organization, how have they been induced or inducted into the organization in a way that preserves the existing organizational culture?
We've also taken a lot of our onboarding online. I think it was a very good first initial presentation where you definitely do see a good onboarding does have a significant impact on your turnover. And we have always had a blended online and face-to-face onboarding. And our stats also show that the way people are onboarded, somewhere, somehow, there's a link with the longevity and tenure in the organization. So we've taken most of our onboarding online, like MTN. We have made it much more, we hope, slick, but it's still not, the ROI is still not yet certain. Because the ability to meet people, talk, engage, I think it's still something that we need to find the right mix between online and face-to-face.
Okay. Similarly, for you, Bess, you spoke quite extensively about how you've taken made an effort to foster human connection by getting new people to meet with their line managers in person. But ultimately, working from home and working together in an organization is going to have quite a significant difference in the way you view the working environment. There's literally no replacement for that kind of constant human connection. Culture-wise, have you guys considered, the impact on maybe the culture of an organization? Have you adjusted the culture of an organization to say, look, maybe our organizational culture needs to shift from this kind of culture to that one in an effort to accommodate the new world of work?
Definitely, Sungula. As I mentioned, we've had to adapt and also take into people's circumstances. So culturally, that can do hardworking and environment that people are used to in the office has had to adapt to say, can people deliver on the outputs rather than people sitting online the whole day and having to do meetings unnecessary. There was a point, when Teams started, there was a point where people were in Teams every day for long hours because everyone was trying to prove that they're working. And some of those meetings were unnecessary and people were getting fatigued. So we had to be honest and say to people, be on Teams if you really have to be on Teams. We're not fast if you're not busy. If you feel that you're not busy, you don't want to be on Teams, you'd rather be sitting and doing your admin, or you'd rather be doing your garden at 4 o'clock, it's fine. We had to learn and adapt to that people have to deal with personal circumstances whilst working at home. They must do homework, they must cook, they must clean everything. So that has had a huge cultural impact on the organization and how we view work and performance and what is required from each person, rather to measure the person based on outputs rather than the amount of hours they spend online. So that has been a huge change for us. And as I said, it has been more welcomed. People are feeling more relaxed, more at home. We do encourage people to have exercise, to have fun activities. We sometimes organize those activities ourselves. We would organize exercise because people get fatigued from sitting in front of the computer the whole day. We would organize work from home activities where someone would showcase their talents around cooking. I remember Paul Norman came online and showed us how he can cook a great pizza, etc. And people are showing their different talents just to alleviate the fatigue and to let people know that we understand that you cannot stay on Teams the whole day. You at some point you need to relax, you need to have a bit of fun and adjust. I mean, people were psychologically stressed by COVID itself. And now you must be stressed by sitting on Teams, which in itself is tiring. So our culture has adopted a lot to being more friendly, to being more people-centric, and more empathetic to people's circumstances.
Okay. And Robbie, just in your experience, from an onboarding perspective, is this the new way of doing things that's going to last indefinitely, or do you think once the vaccine is now coming, as you said, it's closer to being distributed and approved, do you foresee that life will return to normal with people coming back to office and maybe have more flexibility, but generally onboarding online will be a thing of the past? You're on mute still, as your mute moment for the afternoon.
The famous line for 2020, Sungula.
Yes, mute moments. You're still off there, Robbie. That might be a bigger problem than the mute button. Are you there? I think we've lost Robbie. While Robbie just sorts himself out. Bess, what for you? Bess, you
like
haven't.
I had to join.
Yeah, it's fine. Bess, what are your plans? I mean, do you think that you'll come back to working in the office? I mean, once the vaccine is out, and really COVID is more of a flu situation than a real death, life-threatening disease. Do you see people coming back to the office full time, and maybe onboarding online will be something for extreme circumstances more than an exception to the rule?
So from an MTN perspective, the plan really is to leave most people working from home. Even with the vaccine, we don't foresee that we will ever have 100% capacity in the office. We might have 30-40% back in the office, but we've already planned in our minds that we will be working from home. We are busy putting together policies and procedures on how that will work going forward. So that is the future world of work for us, working from home. We've adapted to the new circumstances. I mean, we were forced to be agile and we became agile.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question here that came in from Portia Sitole, and she's saying, onboarding was a process that was viewed as one that takes 3 months to really complete from the initial instance to the completion of the onboarding process. Do you think that her question is do you still see the onboarding process as such, meaning a 3-month process? And how often do you evaluate the effectiveness of the onboarding program? Secondly, and how have you measured if the program is meeting employee expectations in terms of setting them up for success? Ideally, that would be one I'll give to Robbie, but I think we can Nathan or Bess can take either one of those.
So in my view, Sungula, onboarding can vary.
That's fine. I can say that it's not anyway. Okay, so go ahead, Beth.
All right. So onboarding can take anything from a month to 1 year, depending on the position, depending on the person, depending on where they're being onboarded. We found that if a person is new in the organization and they do not understand the processes and the systems, depending on their positions, it could take them a month to 3 months. You know, but your typical CEOs who go out to the opcos in the countries, in the regions, it will typically take them about a year. And part of the reason is that they also need to interact with regulators, meet the local people, understand the local circumstances, how the economy works, who are the suppliers, who are the distributors. So it will vary depending on the level of the employee's work and whether they are new in that role or not. And an experienced person who has worked in that function for many years will onboard much quicker, because it's a matter of showing them perhaps the processes and the systems of MTN, but the work still remains the same. So that's why I'm saying it will vary anything from a month to a year, depending on the person, the position, and the country.
All right, Nathan, you had a point there?
No, Sugula, I agree. I think it's almost like a role specific. You know, other people, it's new to the job, new to the industry, they need a lot more. And I would add that, you know, I think onboarding should be continuous, because there's so many changes in the organization. Make sure that you're continuously onboarding your people in the organization, new policies from HR, new processes, and standards and governance as well.
All right, fantastic. We're at 12:02 now, so we'll overrun slightly. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today on this discussion about the future of onboarding and how to really make sure that your onboarding processes are future-proof going into 2021 and beyond. Thank you all for joining, and despite the technological glitches that we had at the beginning and the end here, I think it was a very valuable conversation for all in attendance. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Sungula.
Thank you. Thank you, Sungula. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Nate.